Hey there, internet friends. Welcome to That D Plus Show. Class is in session for the only show from that nerdy site that lets you know what kind of quality to expect right from the name. I'm your host, Trevor Starkey, and each week we dive into a different Disney Plus offering and discuss its history, how it holds up today, which is a most relevant thing compared to what it's been in a while here, and our general impressions. If you like the show, we would love it if you like, subscribe, rate, review, share the podcast with your friends, all that fun stuff. Joining me this week, as always, Cameron Abbott. How you doing, Cam?
Hey, what's going on?
What's going on is we are kicking off a trip back in time to the 90s
Whoa!
this month. Not a ton of huge stuff coming out to Disney Plus here in August, so as I was looking up ahead at the calendar, I was like, it'd be a fun time to do a themed month. So we're going to do a lot of 90s live action stuff from our childhood. We're kicking it off today with Camp Nowhere, which is a movie that I've not revisited in a while, but is absolutely probably in my top 10 most watched movies ever, just because of how much I watched it as a kid. So
We're good saying it's been more than 20 years since I've seen this film.
probably me too. But yeah, this was I found out it was on Disney Plus through the Pod Meets World of all people. I don't watch or I don't listen to their podcast, but I see their little breakout clips and stuff on Instagram, and saw they were talking about it not too long ago as kind of a film of the era, and they were like, yeah, and you can watch it on Disney Plus now, and I was like, you can? All right. So yeah, if you don't know, Pod Meets World is basically the Boy Meets World crew minus Ben Savage, going back and doing a rewatch of Boy Meets World and kind of reflecting back on their stories. And they have a lot of little side stories and stuff. I may have remembered this of the time, but Danielle Fishel, aka Topanga, dated Andrew Keegan, who is Zach in this movie for a time there during this era. So yeah, Camp Nowhere was kind of the inspiration for this themed month, and then I was kind of looking through and seeing what other fun things can we do from the 90s. So we got a fun 5 episodes this month planned for you, so stay tuned for all of that. We'll tease out some of those a little bit later in the episode. But yeah, today we're going to be talking about Camp Nowhere. This was originally released August 26th, 1994. So we're going back a full 20 years, just almost, a full 20 years to the month, for this one. I suppose I could have saved this till, later in the month to do almost a 20-year or 30-year anniversary.
I was gonna say,
30 years.
Yeah, it's been 30 years.
My bad. I math. Whatever. 30 years to the month. But other releases of the time, the big one that summer, of course, The Lion King, June 15th, 1994. We had Forrest Gump, July 6th. We had Angels in the Outfield and True Lies as a doubleheader on July 15th. Spoilers, one of those may end up being a later in the month revisit. The Mask was July 29th. Clear and Present Danger with Harrison Ford out there, August 3rd. The duo of Airheads and The Little Rascals was August 5th. In the Army Now and The Next Karate Kid, which is the Hilary Swank one, was August 12th, which is with Cobra Kai, it's oh wow, that one was 30 years ago. Wow. Then we have on August 26th here 5 movies that I felt were of worth note, at least in the context of this stuff, and it was also just one of the most packed weekends of that year, it seemed. So we had Camp Nowhere here. We had It's Pat, based on the SNL character. We had Natural Born Killers being the real cultural heavy hitter probably of this one. We have Police Academy Mission to Moscow, aka the 7th and final film of the Police Academy series. And then we had Wagons East, which was the film John Candy was filming when he passed away, and one of his final films to be released. So just a weird little time capsule of a day that this one came out on. And then we didn't have really anything for a couple weeks, but Time Cop was September 16th. Shawshank Redemption, another big heavy hitter of this year, September 23rd. Little Giants and Pulp Fiction were October 14th, and Clerks, October 19th. So shout out to Kevin Smith. So for the box office breakdown that we like to do sometimes on these, I've moved away from Box Office Mojo, because for these like older ones, they just are terrible in terms of like their track record. So I'm looking at the numbers for this one, the numbers.com. They had the movie has a domestic and worldwide. It did not have like an international release.
Yeah.
So it had a gross of $10.4 million, which adjusted for inflation would be approximately $21.9 million dollars in today's money.
Okay.
Where do you think that falls, Cameron? And just as a kind of starting point, I will give you, so 10.4 million is what we're looking at here for Camp Nowhere. The top 10 of 1994 were The Lion King at number 1 with 300 million, Forrest Gump number 2 with 298.5 million, True Lies at number 3 with 146 million, so dropped in half there. The Santa Claus would come out a little bit later in the year as number 4 with 137 million. The Flintstones movie live action was 130 million at number 5. Clear and Present Danger, number 6, 121.9 million. Speed, which came out basically the week before The Lion King there, was number 7 with 121 million. The Mask was number 8 with 118 million. Maverick, the live action slash like film with Mel Gibson and John Gardner, right? That was 101.6 million at number 9, and Interview with the Vampire was number 10 with 100.7 million. Just outside the top 10, Mrs. Doubtfire at number 11, 96.4. So spoilers for maybe we'll do that one later in the month too.
Yeah.
But so the number 11 movie there being just under $100 million.
Yeah, that
where do you think a $10.4 million gross hits us in 1994?
23?
Oh, way lower. 2023 is The Little Rascals with 51.7 million.
Let's go ahead and say 34.
34 is Beverly Hills Cop 3 with 42.5 million.
Jeez, okay. Wow, a lot of movies came out that year. I keep on forgetting. Back in the 90s, they were literally like churning these things out like crazy.
Yeah, we've passed Mighty Ducks. D2 the Mighty Ducks was number 31.
So I'm going.
I would say take a wild swing.
64.
64 is Iron Will, also from Disney, 20.6 million. So
Jeez.
we're still well above 10
83?
83. 83 is Shadowlands with 16.8 million.
Jeez.
And also just to shout this out, Jurassic Park, which was a 1993 movie, is at number 78 with $18 million. So Jurassic Park
94
from the year before, just doing like either late screenings or like re-release screenings, did better than Camp Nowhere here.
94.
94 is The Getaway from Universal, 15.5 million.
Jeez. 106.
Also, like Shawshank Redemption, 91 with 16.4 million.
Yeah, but that became
cult classic film. But
yeah.
yes, it did not do great. Do great box
It's
office.
Ted Turner's favorite movie, and that's why everybody's seen it, because it was on TNT.
It was one of those. It was like A Christmas Story on TNT.
Yeah,
just
it was on TNT like 3 times a year because Ted Turner, it's his favorite movie. And The Christmas Story is Ted Turner's favorite Christmas movie. That's why it's on TBS every year. Like the 24-hour marathon of it. Yeah, I'm going to say 104.
104. Three Ninjas Kick Back, 11.7 million.
Oh, wow. 111.
111, spot on there. Camp Nowhere.
There we go.
$10.4 million.
Jeez,
Yeah.
Louise, man.
I scrolled down, fully not expecting like them to go down that far. I thought I was fully expecting it to be like, all right, it's capped at 100. But yes, 111 was the 111th highest grossing film of 1994. I have like worldwide too, but it's basically like in the same ballpark. I think maybe it does a little bit better worldwide. Yeah, it's 109 worldwide. So somehow it like it moved up a couple spots. I think worldwide probably cuts out a couple of those like re-releases or something like that.
Gosh, honestly though, I don't know if it was bad for like. I don't imagine it was a dud because of. I can't imagine it was this expensive of a movie.
Yeah, I'm trying to see if
Because Christopher
they
Lloyd's the
had
only
any.
like notable. Yeah, Christopher Lloyd's in it, and then like there's a couple of actors that could have like been a bit of like a paycheck, but I can't imagine like none of the kids were.
Yeah. Uh, um. Yeah, I don't know if I'm gonna be able to find any kind of like, here's how much it cost to make this thing. But yeah, it was probably like it did fine for what what it was at the time. Because yeah, while this is the era where like, oh, Jim Carrey's about to make big headlines for making like $20 million a movie or something like that, like he was absolutely the exception, not the rule. So
Yeah,
yeah, I'm not seeing anything in terms of like, here's what the like budget for this film was, but it probably did fine. So has a runtime of 1 hour and 36 minutes. This is a Hollywood Pictures timeline,
yep.
or Hollywood Pictures film.
Shout out to
Not
Hollywood Pictures, man. That was a studio.
Yeah, it's I think I have a bit of trivia thing on it later. But it was basically like oh, this was kind of another one like Touchstone, I think, is the other one that like
Yeah,
is the Disney studio. It's like another Disney studio, but it was like hey, these are this is how we're gonna make some of our PG-13 movies and stuff like that.
these are the Touchstone and Hollywood Pictures were all about. Hey, what like we want to put these movies out, but we don't want to we don't want to saddle the Disney name on them because people will take their kids to see it. And if I remember correctly, had to make Hollywood Pictures because of arachnophobia, I believe.
Oh, I don't have that kind of history scope, so I do not know, but maybe, yeah, possible. Do, 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 do. In the Hollywood Pictures timeline of things, some other notable movies around this era, we had Super Mario Brothers, was May of '93, and they basically distributed in the U.S. That film. They were on a big Pauly Shore kick, so they had Son-in-Law in 1993,
Woof.
as well as the previously mentioned In the Army Now here in August 1994. After Camp Nowhere, oh, we also had Tombstone there, December of '93. The Santa Claus, November 11th, 1994. Yeah, it's probably the last real one like of note here on my list. Let's see. I'm pulling this a little bit on the fly because I had forgotten to to pull in some of these items here. But our director is Jonathan Prince, and it looks like other directing credits he had were an episode of Blossom prior to this. Um, yeah, about it. He went on to direct. Well, it says Grown Ups, but it was not the like Adam Sandler Grown Ups. It's a TV movie of Grown Ups. So yeah, this was like he did an episode of Blossom. He did this. Did an episode of Party of Five after this. Not a ton on the directing front for Jonathan Prince. And our writers, we have Andrew Kurtzman and Elliot Wald. Andrew Kurtzman, in addition to this, he would do another fun film that I think back fondly of from the era in Down Periscope. Did that a couple of years later with Kelsey Grammer. And Elliot Wald, also, yeah, Down Periscope. So they were a writing duo. Yeah, not a ton from them. They had sorry, prior to this, they were SNL writers for a handful of years. But yeah, then they had Camp Nowhere and Down Periscope, and that appears to have been their kind of last project.
Hurrah.
It was Down Periscope. Our cast of characters here, we have, of course, Christopher Lloyd as Dennis Van Welker, having been in stuff like Taxi, Back to the Future, Who Framed Roger Rabbit, DuckTales the movie, Treasure of the Lost Lamp, which I've done a That D Plus show on. The Addams Family / Addams Family Values around this time, Angels in the Outfield from earlier in the summer, Camp Nowhere here. He would go on to do the voice of Rasputin in Anastasia, the animated film. He was in the live action film My Favorite Martian. And just pulling this in here for you and our Kingdom Hearts family. He, of course, playing Xehanort in later Kingdom Hearts things, like Kingdom Hearts 3, I think, right? I think that's who he's playing.
No, I don't think so.
I think he plays Xehanort in Kingdom Hearts 3 and Remind. I think that's what he did. Come on, Christopher Lloyd. Who were you in that? Oh, why are you not?
Oh, he is Xehanort. You're right.
Yeah, it starts out Ansem was I remember being Billy Zane in the first one, but yeah, by the time we get
no, that is right. He
3.
is Xehanort in that. I believe I'm trying to think if he's what Xehanort he is, because he's only in Remind and Melody of Memories. I'm looking at I looked this up because I was like I need to figure this out.
Anyway, while you look that up, I'll talk through some of the other people. Jonathan Jackson here is Morris Mudd Himmel. Prior to this, and then he went back in the late 2000s. But he did 385 episodes of General Hospital. He was on General Hospital basically before this movie. This ends up being his first film role. Then kind of goes away from General Hospital for a while, and then looking through his credits was he came back as the same character in 2009. So his character basically came back after a prolonged absence in whatever crazy storylines they were doing. And yeah, he did that from 2009 to 2015 pretty steadily.
Yep, I do apologize. He is because Rutger Hauer died before they could do Reminder Melody of Memories. So, and before that, Xehanort was voiced by Leonard Nimoy.
There we go.
So it was Leonard Nimoy, then Rutger Hauer replaced him, and then Rutger Hauer died, and so they brought in Christopher Lloyd to do Master Xehanort.
I feel like those are all very different voices.
They really are. Trevor, here's the... You're not
It's the kind of thing I feel like you'd try and go for a voice match. They did Dan Castellaneta for the Genie, because, hey, he went in and did the second movie when Robin Williams didn't come back. So it's okay, cool, this works fine. So yeah, weird that they...
Well, Rutger Hauer, I think, did not a match, but a pretty good, same tone that Leonard Nimoy was going for. I don't recall from Reminder Melody... Actually, you know what? No. He does a pretty good, match to how... he's a good between of Nimoy and Hauer's... voices. They're all still significantly different.
Sure, yeah.
But I think all three of them pretty much nailed the character. They're just, it's old evil man. Old evil man. He, it's not a hard voice to do, I guess, for professionals, but, yeah, no, I mean, it's fine.
Yeah. After Camp Nowhere, Jonathan Jackson, Mudd, went on to be in a couple episodes of Boy Meets World. He's also in Tuck Everlasting, Dirty Dancing Havana Nights. He was notably Kyle Reese in the Terminator Sarah Connor Chronicles series.
Oh my God, you're right, yeah.
And then he was on 124 episodes of Nashville as a regular over on that show most recently.
Dude's been acting, man.
Yeah, he kept it up. Andrew Keegan plays Zach Dell here. After Camp Nowhere, he would go on also to be in an episode of Boy Meets World. He was an uncredited cameo, but kind of a notable presence in Independence Day. He would go on to be in 10 Things I Hate About You, and and A Midsummer Night's Rave, back when we were hey, let's turn all of Shakespeare's stuff into 90s teen dramas.
Yep.
And then he had a long stint on Seventh Heaven of 24 episodes.
Yeah, that's right. He was Jessica Biel's boyfriend.
Yeah, that sounds right.
He was the one who... yeah, that's a whole story arc where they're going on the date, and he takes her to a motel, and he reveals this is where my parents used to meet up, because he reveals that he's like a child of an affair, and it's like a really weird thing to do. Jessica Biel like slaps him and like walks away, and then he like proves that he's actually a good person, I guess.
You remember this show way better than I do.
Cannot. I do not know why. I do not know why I remember so many plot lines about that show.
Oh, about the super religious family show? You don't remember
Hey,
why that may have resonated with you?
Maybe. I don't know. Yeah. Anyway. Yeah. A fun note about this guy though is that I went to elementary school with his cousin.
Okay.
Yeah, his cousin. It was like that was always his like big like fun thing to know about me. He goes, "This guy's my cousin. He's like my mom. Like his dad's my mom's brother."
Well, now I'm like, was that guy just lying? Because that seems like a very easy lie to tell and get away with.
Here's the thing. It would be if it wasn't just such a weird one.
Sure, absolutely.
Like it was.
But that has very like my uncle works at Nintendo vibes to it.
It would if it was an uncle working at Nintendo. If you said, "Oh, my uncle works at ColecoVision."
Oh, I don't know. This guy was like the hot thing in the late '90s. So yeah, sure. Like you could use that.
But
as
for
a
a bunch
point.
of like 8-year-olds, like they weren't. Nobody else was watching Camp Nowhere but me.
Yeah.
Obviously, it only made $10 million at the box office. Probably made like a couple $100 million off of like rentals because of how often I think we both ended up renting this movie.
It wasn't rentals for me. It was we
You
burned
bought it?
we burned this one on an HBO weekend and
there you
just
go.
had it like it was like this was probably on a tape with like 2 other movies. Like we had just a 6-hour tape that like
Nice.
it was, hey, if you want to get to Camp Nowhere, fast forward to this point, or maybe this was the first one.
Jeez, that
and
was
then
the thing back then. Oh
Yeah.
my gosh, yeah.
Yeah.
My family did that with TBS movies all the time. Specifically Hudson Hawk, I remember.
Yeah, we talked about that a few weeks ago. Marnette Patterson plays Trish Prescott. She also went on to do an episode of Boy Meets World after this. She was on the show Something So Right for 37 episodes.
Dude, that's right. That's where I also remember her from. Was from Boy Meets World.
Yeah.
Because she'd be like, "Sean, aren't you going to ask me?" Yeah, okay. I remember.
Only one episode, so that is apparently a very memorable episode for you. But then...
Well, I spent an hour and a half wondering, where do I remember this girl from?
Sure. Most recently, she was in the film from a few years back with Bradley Cooper, American Sniper. She was in that one. And The Fake Baby. Melody Kay plays Gabby Nowicki. She did not do a ton of acting. She very much kind of like seemingly walked away from it not too long after this, but she was in The Neverending Story 3, which
Yes.
I imagine was one of those like direct to video.
No, I'm pretty sure that one came out.
Did it come out in theaters?
I mean, it was a Neverending Story. Neverending Story was hot.
I
Also, Neverending Story, I believe Jack Black is a villain in that movie.
Maybe. I only remember the first one. I knew there were other Neverending Stories, but it was one that like, oh, those just never like hit.
Yep, Jack Black is the bad guy in it. I remember this.
There you go. M. Emmett Walsh is T.R. Polk, known from stuff like The Jerk, Blade Runner, Fletch, Critters, Raising Arizona, Romeo plus Juliet, and in his later years, he was in Knives Out shortly before he passed a few years ago. We get Tom Wilson as Lieutenant Elliot Hendricks, of course, Biff from Back to the Future, and then recently he's been doing like a lot of voice stuff over the years, but he had a recurring run on DC Legends of Tomorrow for a little while there. And Wendy McKenna as Dr. Celeste Dunbar, who it's wild because I'm like, I feel like I recognize this woman, but it could just be that I watched this so much, and then it was looking at this, I'm like, oh, she is the naive little sister from Sister Act 1 and 2 back in The Habit, but I didn't recognize her without The Habit. Yeah. Then after this, she'd be in Air Bud as well. That was kind of her big era. She's continued acting here and there over the years, but those are the big highlights that I recalled her from. Then we have a few little kind of little what I'm calling cameo corner, just in terms of like, hey, these people, here's like one other thing they did.
Yeah.
Peter Scolari, who is Mudd's dad. Donald Himmel, prior to this, he was on Newhart for many, many years, but I remember him because he went on to be the Rick Moranis father character from Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, the TV show.
Yep.
Kate Mulgrew here as Rachel Prescott, of course, from Star Trek Voyager.
Oh, shout out to that guy, though.
Captain Janeway.
Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, the TV show. I only remember one episode, and it was they had leprechauns, and it turns out they're like they returned all the gold to the leprechaun, except they found out that one of the coins was melted down onto his boss's tooth for a filling, and so he had to take the tooth out. I remember that.
All right. We have a fun little cameo from Burgess Meredith here as Fine, aka the owner of the spa who rents them the cabins, of course from Rocky. Hilary Tuck as Betty Stoller would also go on to be in the Honey I Shrunk the Kids TV show. We have Allison Mack as one of the girls at camp. Heather, of course, would go on to be in Smallville and then kind of a cult. Jessica Alba as Gail.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
One of the trivia things, because Andrew Keegan also went on and did, he calls it a religious facility, but others called it a cult kind of thing.
Well, yeah, but they also
that was also like raided by the feds because they were distributing kombucha and did not have like permits or licenses to distribute kombucha.
Yeah, which is kind of like dumb anyway. Like
Yeah.
I remember hearing about that. I was like, this is stupid.
Yeah.
But yeah, the whole thing was like it was like a like Buddhist philosophy, and then like I forgot the comparison that somebody made about it. It was like if Buddhism meets what's the like they're in Pennsylvania, they're Quakers. It's like Buddhism meets Quakerism, basically. Like you come from different backgrounds, you spirituality, yoga and stuff, but also like silent ceremonies, if I remember correctly.
Yeah. Jessica Alba makes her film debut here as Gail, who I would then know and get a bigger crush on a few years later in Dark Angel, but of course rose to prominence in stuff like Sin City and the Fantastic Four. Jonathan Frakes also pops up in an uncredited role as Bob Spiegel, of course, from Star Trek The Next Generation and like Star Trek / director extraordinaire at this point. Yeah, he pops up as a fun little like, I'm here to see my son. Oh, they told us it ends at 3 or whatever, or noon. No, 9. Oh, anyway. Some trivia here. Jonathan Jackson's soap opera mother, Jeannie Francis, has a small role as Arnold's mother, and Arnold's father is played by her real-life husband, Jonathan Frakes. So, yeah.
Yeah.
There's a fun little kind of twofer in that little cameo.
That was fun.
Christopher Lloyd, according to IMDb, I'm going to put this one as according to IMDb because there was another trivia thing that kind of like maybe contradicted this. Christopher Lloyd initially disliked the script, but only agreed to appear for extra money as his previous films, Angels in the Outfield and Addams Family Values, only performed modestly well at the box office. So he felt he needed a little more financial security after the tepid box office results of the previous films, and only agreed to appear if one of his co-stars from Back to the Future trilogy had a supporting role. This is why Tom Wilson, who played Biff in Back to the Future, appears as Lieutenant Hendricks in this film.
Hey.
So the contradicting thing I saw was David Graff, who is like one of the big Police Academy guys,
Yeah.
was also apparently offered that role, and he turned it down because he didn't want to feel like it was stepping on the toes of his Police Academy character. So it's like, okay, 2 trivia things in here seemingly being like, which one of these is true? Are they? But maybe they're both true.
I mean, they both can be true.
Yeah.
It sounds like, oh, we offered it to the Police Academy guy and he turned it down. And Chris Lloyd's like, well, I mean, I'll do your movie, but like, if you have that open role, let me get Biff in here.
Yeah. The name of the fake computer camp used is Binary Pines Computer Camp, a play on Twin Pines Mall from Back to the Future. Trish mentions a drama teacher of her sister's, aka Van Welker, trying to make The Silence of the Lambs into a musical. And I basically took this note as I was watching the movie before doing the trivia thing here. But in 2005, brothers John and Al Kaplan created Silence the Musical, which is a parody to the movie, and which I saw at Stray Cat Theater back in 2018. So I've seen Silence the Musical. It is a very funny show featuring songs like This Is It from Clarice, If I Could Smell Her Cunt from Lecter,
Jeez.
I'd Fuck Me from Bill, and Put the Fucking Lotion in the Basket from Bill and Catherine.
That's a song?
Yeah, those are all songs. Yeah, it is a very fun. The show opens with Silence, sung by the Lambs. So yeah, it is a very funny, tongue-in-cheek, just absurd musical. but and especially I went and saw it as somebody who's never seen the actual movie Silence of the Lambs, but like I know enough about like Bill and all that stuff to have enjoyed it nonetheless. But yes, very funny musical. So hearing that line and being like, "Hey, 2024 has news for you," 1994. Basically, we're gonna meet in the middle, and this will actually be a musical. So there you go. And then, yeah, going back to some of the stuff we touched on earlier, this was originally supposed to be released under the traditional Walt Disney Pictures banner. However, Disney objected to a couple profanities in the script that they found too strong to be in a traditionally family-friendly Disney film. Eventually, Disney released the film under their Hollywood Pictures banner, which was a division that released films considered more mature than the reputably clean Disney material. And as mentioned above, Peter Scolari and Hilary Tuck would go on to star together in Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, the TV show. So Cam, what did you think going back and rewatching this one?
Yeah.
How does it hold up? We don't, like, a lot of times we're doing the how does it hold up, which was very much like an idea from the early era of the show when we were doing like a lot of Disney Channel original movies and stuff. But so much of what we're doing now is like, hey, these are movies that just came out, or here's the stuff we're watching as it releases on Disney Plus. So now that we're like, hey, we're doing a month where we're actually going back and like revisiting these movies from the 90s, how do you think this one held up?
It's rough, especially at the beginning. There's like a lot of strong edits in the beginning that I was like, ooh, I don't know about this, but those like really are not apparent towards, like, they don't show up once the kids get to camp. Overall, like, incredibly impressed by Christopher Lloyd's performance. Was really impressed by that as an adult who now understands these references that he makes.
Yeah, this for me as well. This is very much the first time I've watched this in a long time. So a lot of the like adult humor things were going over my head, despite the number of times I watched this as a kid.
Yeah. Overall, like it's fine. Like it holds up okay-ish. There's some rough spots for sure. Like rough spots for dialogue and stuff. But honestly, the kids are good enough performers that they just kind of act it out and it works.
Yeah, they're only, I mean, like, it's obviously dated from like, oh, the computer camp and seeing like all those 90s computers
for sure,
immediately is like, oh, ooh, that looks funny.
Also, like, it's super dated because like you could just Google it in the modern day. Like
Sure,
this movie,
yeah.
this is one of those movies like this movie can't work today. It can only work in a period of time where like you can't do vetted research.
We were talking about it last night, and I'll talk about it more later. But like, accepted is what proves your rule wrong. You would just need to do a little bit more work to
Fair.
Google it. Like,
Fair enough.
Okay, it's not just here's fake brochures and here's a fake actor to come in and do this. Here's the website that like my friend mocked up or something like that, and you craft a few fake Yelp reviews or something like that, and you can get away with that kind of stuff. Absolutely. But yeah, I think like holds up wise, the only thing that like really jumped out is like, ooh, that wouldn't fly today. Are the repeated like short jokes where they're calling the guy a midget instead of like just a short joke or something.
Yeah,
like
it's
that.
a midget and also pygmy at one point. It's like, oh, okay. Oh.
Yeah.
Well, that's not okay.
Yeah. So it's like, oh, those are like but like,
To be fair, those are the douchebag kids.
yeah, exactly. We're not supposed to like them anyway. But yeah, I think the other like Trisha's repeated like très blasé, or like her use of très all the time, like to be like French and like I'm being hip and cool, was like, oh, this is like a weird time capsule.
Yep.
Like I don't remember that being a thing of like, but I imagine it strikes me as like that's something that like Cher from Clueless kind of says or something like that. So something of like that era where like, okay, yeah, the popular girl is, let me throw in some French to, show how cultured I am, but it's just like a weird thing now in 2024. But for me, this was like immediately is like from the kids screaming nowhere, like in the opening credits song kind of thing, immediately took me back to a lot of this
Absolutely,
stuff.
yeah.
I love the first scene we get is like the computer camp like video, like promotional video, and like we hear voiceover of it, but the guy's doing the voiceover live in the room. Like
Yep.
he's selling his camp to the parents there in the room instead of just being like a recorded voiceover on a commercial or something like that. I was like, that's wild.
That and also the film itself is silent. There's no sound coming out of it.
Yeah.
It's just his voice.
Yeah. So yeah, I love that little bit. I like. I always love the little foursome of friends in this one. In particular, like I love the introduction that we get kind of right away of like Mud and Zach are friends, but like they're like Zach has to kind of play the role of the cool kid and the bully and kind of stuff. But like
Yeah.
he does it so that other people don't pick on Mud.
Yes.
And so I like their friendship in that regard. It's a fun little subversion of that like jock and the nerdy kid kind of beat. And then yeah, when
They introduced the recurring gag of the rubber screwdriver, which is plays off later. Like it's like it. There's a lot of smart, interesting things that they do with this movie.
yeah.
That like pay off really. So when I say it's like it feels a little dated because of like some editing stuff at the beginning. That's it. That's really the only like quote unquote bad thing about the movie.
Yeah.
Is like just some rough 90s style edits of like scenes not really matching up. But yeah, the bathroom scene is brilliant. Like swirling the hair.
Yep.
Like looks like fresh toilet look.
Yep. Yeah, I love it. This movie does do a great job of like setting something up and then paying it off later. So like seeing, oh yeah, this was written by a pair of like long-running SNL writers absolutely makes sense that they set up the gag and then they come back to it. And the best one of those is like the 5:15 flyby and how that kind of comes back in at the end of the film. But yeah, once we finally get like Christopher Lloyd into the mix, it is like this is a couple years after he did the bad guy in the DuckTales movie voice kind of stuff, and this is very much like he's going over the top and kind of getting to it almost feels like it's a role that was written for Robin Williams and Robin Williams passed, and so they went with like they found Christopher Lloyd, and Christopher Lloyd was like, I can do all these different characters, sure, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think he has a ton of fun with it, and the idea of these like four archetypal camps of like, all right, we've got our computer camp, we've got fat camp, we've got like military camp, and we've got theater camp is like a fun, like those are such fun, diverse enough kind of beats
absolutely.
that you get to see him have fun with those different roles in the little like selling of the camps. And then of course we get the fun little beat where like, all right, all the other kids want in on this scam. How are we going to make this work kind of thing? One of the notes I took that I mentioned to you yesterday is like, I love how flawlessly Mud just yes ands Christopher Lloyd's character throughout. Like
incredible.
From the first introduction of like,
Dad,
yeah, Dad, they need you down at the plant.
They called the plant they need you down there, Dad.
Yeah.
Yeah, as soon as that starts up, and then they just have like an incredible back and forth. Mm-hmm. I think this is what really helps this movie succeed is the natural chemistry that a lot of the kids have together.
Yeah.
In addition to Christopher Lloyd's natural bonding with Jeremy Jackson, I think that it is just
Jonathan Jackson.
Sorry, Jonathan Jackson. Really brilliant in achieving a like really good dynamic. And just coming off very flawlessly at times, especially with the Doctor. Mm-hmm. There is just a natural charm that they bring out of each other that feels good, and those scenes fly because of them. Like the film, I think when it's just the kids, like it suffers from they're all kids. Mm-hmm. And then when Christopher Lloyd is in the mix, all of a sudden this film just soars because he just is such a great like acting resource for these kids.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I took a note that was basically like we get to the camp and like Christopher Lloyd's going to go hang out by the lake and just kind of like enjoy his 8 weeks here, being paid to kind of be a loose chaperone for these kids.
And he did it for $1,000.
Yeah.
Like when all the other kids start pouring their money in, he doesn't get it. Like there's never a like, oh, you cheat. Like it's straight up like $1,000 to hide out in a cabin in the middle of nowhere. All right.
Yeah. I even love the like, I knew I've been here before. Like when they're talking about like all the hippie stuff back in the 60s.
Yeah.
But I love the little moment in camp where like, yeah, all the kids like realize Mud's got all the money and they like do the whole like money Mud chant thing. And
Yeah.
then the movie just turns into blank check for like a couple scenes and just the kids like bringing truckloads of toys and shit to the camp to like have fun. It's like, yep, becomes blank check for a couple minutes.
Well, for a second I was like, well, okay, what's happening here? Like, I'm curious. And then we get to a point where the you're going through the list of things and it's like, oh, well, they only had like $3,000 a pop. Mm-hmm. But like they didn't, the most expensive thing they bought was maybe a couple $100 like big screen TV. Mm-hmm. Like that's only like the major super expensive thing that they bought.
Yeah.
Like, so everything else was like realistically could be bought with what they had.
Yeah. Like
I remember this movie being like,
stuff.
they were extravagant. And looking at it now as like an adult, like, I mean, MSRP on those Super Soakers would have been a little high because of the branding, but
yeah, I mean,
yeah, like
you're looking at like $10-$20 probably for those kind of stuff.
for those Super Soakers, especially the
fireworkers.
backpack Super Soaker, you're looking at closer to like 80 probably.
Yeah. Not. I mean.
Oh, sorry, 60. I'd say it's like 50,
this is in the
60.
'90s, so I don't think they were.
I'd say
getting
it's like
that
$50
high,
for that high for those ones because of the.
Yeah, maybe those. And like, yeah, they're like, oh, they get a chainsaw and.
But like the chainsaw's like a rental chainsaw from the dude doing the like bringing it in. Like
the kid who tossed his cello into in the bonfire gets a electric guitar.
I think that actually might be the most expensive, maybe the most expensive item out of everything. But
Yeah.
other than that, and then it's food, and also shout out to Mud being like, number 3, if anybody finds a Taco Bell, let me know immediately.
Yeah.
Like, shout out to that. Yeah, but it's like, oh yeah, they splurge, and it's like, not really.
It's also 3,000 $3,000 a kid for like 25, 30 kids. So, you know, they had some money to play around with.
They had fat stack of cash.
Yeah. And clearly they still have a lot at the end and can pay off the gremlin and all that stuff. But yeah, like they have a lot of fun in there. One of the other little beats that I think is one of those like, okay, yeah, this would probably still be okay, especially because of how it plays out. But like Walter's little horn dogness for like really, really wanting to skinny dip at camp and stuff.
But here's the thing though, is that he really wants that, but he's denied it consistently.
Yeah.
And he's played for the fool at the end of the movie.
Yeah, exactly.
The only reason that works is because he never reaps a benefit from it. It's always a detraction.
Yeah.
This girl's kind of like warming up to him, and then he does something pervy and it throws her off.
Yeah.
Like, and versus the other side of it being Zach being like, well, yeah, I'm going to drop out, you know, and then it's just like, but you know, I am a nice guy. I am this really accepting, like,
Here, yeah, let's make a necklace out of nuts and bolts because that's what you need, little homesick girl.
yeah, like you get these like really wonderful kind moments that like elevate these characters. Most especially, I really was like appreciated. I forgot her character's name, but the girl who's like the original fat camp girl.
Yeah, Gabby.
Gabby has such a wonderful arc as kind of a voice of reason and support, but at the same time has her own fully fulfilled arc, which is like, oh, I'm just going to kind of be this administrative like mom type character for the camp, like cooking like regular breakfast and like being kind of this more administrative person to the kind of like lead, like the planning side of Jonathan Jackson's character, Mud. Mud's character, and then the charisma of Zach, and then honestly, the only person I can think who got maybe a little shortchanged is Trish, but also her goal was to start making out with Zach. Her goal was really just, I don't want to do a theater camp with I don't want to go do a theater camp shout out also, massive shout out when she says like screw you, Roger and Hammerstein. Like, as somebody who hates Roger and Hammerstein, love that.
Sure.
Love that. Carousel can suck it. I hate Roger and Hammerstein so much.
I don't fault you on that. I mean, they're definitely a period of their time, and we are no longer of that time. But yeah, like a lot of my notes here, like, oh right, I had a huge crush on Trish. Oh right, I had a huge crush on Gabby and Dr. Dunbar. Just like the ladies in this movie, I was like, crushing on a lot of them. A young uh, Jennifer or Jessica Alba as well, of course. Did you
surprisingly, or unsurprisingly, I think too young to have like had sexual awakenings for this movie.
And that's also like,
Yeah.
like you were a baby when this movie actually came out, where I was watching it as like, an 8-year-old, 9-year-old, 10-year-old kind of thing. I guess, yeah.
I was
9 or 10.
I was 5 when this movie came out. Yeah. And so like watching it consistently, like over the years, I think the last time I saw this, I was maybe 10, maybe 11. Like, so we're talking like 2000, 2001. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I was not cognizant enough watching this movie as a kid. I was just like, kids, no adults, kid power, like riding bikes. Oh, he's going down on a skateboard with like Roman candles shooting off of his head. Oh, cool.
Yeah, that's like, this is
Super soakers.
So as I said, like this movie for a little bit goes into blank check territory.
Yeah.
At the end, after they've kind of like pulled the wool over everybody's eyes, we get like a little bit of a like Home Alone beat.
Oh, that honestly, that is what makes this film like bland, is that end.
This is very much in this era where we had like child wish fulfillment things.
Yeah.
Spoilers, another one of the movies we're going to be looking at this month is like Rookie of the Year, where like kid becomes pro baseball player for the Chicago Cubs or whatever. And it's just like from this era where, yeah, kids getting to do all these crazy things. We've already done an episode of that D Plus show on Blank Check, which is like one of my favorites of this era as well. And obviously we did a running thing of Home Alone films over the years, every holiday season the last few years. So yeah, like those vibes of this movie are just a lot of fun and help kind of pad out the plot that we have with Mud and Dennis, and then Dennis eventually kind of like having his little meet cute with the doctor, and deciding to clean up his act a little bit.
Yeah. Not having to clean up his act too much.
Yeah, no, like he's basically like she like absolutely is like here for his free spirit vibe. It's very much just hey, like you also need to own up the responsibility, and he does. He enjoys taking care of these kids, and like when
they show off at the beginning that he was their like you mentioned at the top, he was their drama teacher.
Yeah.
So he already has a history of like working with kids. It's just he wanted to do Silence of the Lambs musical, and that's what got him fired. So like he still loves working with kids, and he obviously has, like, Christopher Lloyd does a great job of showing like this guy has a connection with kids and he helps them. To the point where like he does like there's this. And I think
we have like the rainy mud.
I think
scene.
the rainy day episode, or not episode, but like segment, I think shows off, hey, it's not just Mud he connects with, he connects to everybody, because he's like, I will help you orchestrate a day where you guys, it's rained out, but guess what? Let's go wrestle in the mud. Let's do Greco-Roman, like Roman inspiration. He does a whole like Hindu, like
let's do the shadow play.
Shadow play with
Trish.
With Trish. It's this whole, like, he does this incredible job of like connecting with each of the, like everybody. Also, he connects with Gabby when he gives her mom
the chocolate cake.
The chocolate cake that is like garbage. Mm-hmm. He goes, yours is Betty Crocker. Hers is like
liver paste or something.
Yeah, liver paste.
Raw liver.
Yeah. And it's just brilliant. Like, it's like he connects with all of these kids. And honestly, they make it work at the very end. Like, oh, I can't believe nobody's pressing charges. The only parent who would have pressed charges is Zach's dad. Mm-hmm. And they got rid of him.
Yeah, and he like, they had a nice, like, one of my notes is like, I'm a sucker for like the strong dad, like hugging the son kind of beat. And so, yeah, even here, that still got me.
Like, oh, you've really like become a responsible young man. I don't need to see any more of the camp. Like, you did great. Like,
yeah. The like, I love you, dad, I love you, son kind of moment with them.
Which is like, oh, a real breakthrough. And then he goes, because it's like, if he had found out that it was fake, he 100% would have pressed charges in that moment.
In the, one of the things I always think about when I watch this movie, I'm curious if you had this experience at all, or if over here in Scottsdale, we were a little too far away from you on it. So at Chaparral Park, right down the street from us, every year they would do a thing called Mighty Mud Mania. Is that a thing you remember at all from your childhood?
No, we did not cross the Scottsdale Mesa barrier for Mud Day.
Fair enough. So yeah, Mighty Mud Mania was a thing originally like sponsored by like Tide or some cleaning company to be like we're going to do a big old demonstration of like just how effective we are. We can pull the mud out of all these clothes and stuff. Failed miserably. They did not do it. The kids got way too muddy. But it ended up being such a fun event that like the city of Scottsdale kind of kept doing it year over year. And it would basically just be like, they would take like a little section of the park and kind of spray everything down, make it fully muddy, and you would like it would be like going down like a mudslide kind of thing, or doing like a little like climbing little obstacle course of like just mud and getting messy and stuff. And I think of that when I think like the handful of years I did Mighty Mud Mania stuff. Again, it's literally right down the street from where I grew up.
That was not a thing that happened in Mesa. If anybody tried to do that in Mesa, like I guess the city of Scottsdale was behind it. That makes sense. Mm-hmm. That sounds like some stuff like somebody would have done in Mesa, and then like the city would have shut it down because like you're like tearing up the turf. It's like we used to go ice blocking in out in Gilbert at a park because of the high hills that they had there, and then the city is like the town of, I shouldn't say city, it's the town of Gilbert. They're not a real city. The town of Gilbert shut it down because we were ruining their grass.
Hold on, is that like town of Gilbert dig just some bullshit like Mesa versus Gilbert nonsense?
No, they're actually like their official terminology and borders. Okay. Basically, the way that
who the fuck actually pays attention to that? It's like
Mesa does. Mesa does.
The city of Mesa, the township of blah blah blah.
It's the city of Mesa and the town of Gilbert.
The incorporated land of blah blah blah.
Listen, if you didn't grow up next to Gilbert,
everything's a goddamn city. We're all suburbs to Phoenix. Shut up. Nobody. Everyone should stop being as pretentious as like Scottsdale and Paradise Valley.
Like, listen, you didn't grow up next to Gilbert. You don't understand Gilbert people. Like, you didn't have to grow up by them. All right, I did. They live in a town.
I had to grow up next to Mesa people.
Yeah, hardworking, blue collar people.
Okay.
And then sometime in the late '90s, early 2000s. East Mesa blew the fuck up with a bunch of money. And suddenly became like mini Scottsdale. And it's like, how did this happen? Town of, their actual designation is a town, and they like it that way. The government does it. That's
sure.
Thing.
I feel like legally though, it's like if you're this number of, if you're this population, you're a town. If you're this population, you're a city. Or maybe that's just really long carryover from like SimCity on the Nintendo is why I think that. Like, oh, if you were up until this point, you were a town, and then when you hit this population, you were a city, and you got these rewards, and when you were this point, you were blah blah blah, and you got these.
I think it has to do with
you became like a metropolis or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, I think they are like I think it's just the borders. Like it's too small of an area to be considered a city.
Anyway, so yeah, I just wanted to like the mud sequence is always a fun little one for me, just as a flashback to, again, like me being these kids' age kind of at the time, and like the little mud days we would have like once a year on the summers. I also love the 1-2 punch of Mud having like being like, who's Jimi Hendrix, and then like a couple minutes later, oh, the British kid clearly knows who Jimi Hendrix is. He's doing the national anthem Jimi Hendrix style.
Yep.
Love that. Shout out to Tom Wilson popping in here and being a fun little antagonist. It's wild, like the movie kind of overloads itself a little bit on like antagonists, because you have like the parents as antagonists. You have T.R. Polk coming in here and being like, I gotta get my money for this gremlin. Then you have like the suspicious cop. Then you have like the suspicious doctor, but that also ends up being like the little romance. But it's like, oh, they really like piled up the forces against these kids for the third act, so like everybody would come together to really have those moments. But yeah, my note here, shout out to T.R. Polk for just doing a straight up breaking and entering into Dennis's
I was about
trailer.
to say, like, he just commits crimes the entire time. He breaks his shed, says apologies about the door because he kicks in the lock, like he breaks the door,
Yeah.
and then he breaks and enters, and it's like this guy's a criminal.
Yeah, he's just
This guy's a dirtbag.
this is why repo men think they have all the power they have.
Yeah, repo men think they're cops and they're not. So,
Do, 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 do. Trying to think if I have any. Oh, like I always remember, like as somebody who growing up out here in Arizona, I feel like I washed my parents' car far more than we ever took it to an actual car wash. But I love the car wash sequence of this. And maybe it was because like it was such an unknown of like, oh, that's what they do in there. So like when Christopher Lloyd is just kind of like hobbling along and kind of doing the whole sequence where he's stuck in the car. I just always remember that as like a fun bit of this film. Fun little physical comedy stuff. I feel like I absolutely used the a buck a bean kind of thing on my parents at some point to try and like gain some money on various stuff. But shout out to the lima bean sequence and how much Mud clearly likes those lima beans. Also shout out to the hey, we're here in Mud's room for the big fun reveal. What else do we have? I like the little kind of pairing of the kind of the popular kids and then the nerdy kids. Fun little like, little romances there among everybody.
he gets that weird cheek kiss that lasts way too long. Not way too long, sure. It just lasts weirdly longer than you'd expect a cheek kiss to last.
It's more of a like, why is she giving him a cheek
That's
kiss?
another thing, too.
Is
It's like,
more.
that's-
It's the fact that it exists at all. It's
Yeah.
like
they did not have that. They did not have like a setup relationship where like he was crushing on her at any point.
Yeah. But it is very much like if you were the nerd and like the most popular pretty girl came up and gave you a kiss on the cheek, yeah, you'd like that, whatever your existing
Yeah, but then
relationship
he has
was.
like a total makeout sesh with Gabby that's like good.
Yeah.
Like he has a better makeout sesh than Zach and what's her name?
I mean, he's our hero of the movies.
He is. It was his idea for the Camp Nowhere.
We're gonna quote unquote give him that win or whatever.
Yeah.
That was absolutely.
He's grounded till he's 30.
Plot there. Yeah.
Shout out to his dad just being like, you know what, this was like a good idea.
Here's the comic book that I know you like, even though I kind of don't like you having them. Yeah, I like the relationship that we end up getting there, and I do love the like Home Alone bit of like, all right, here's the way we're gonna pull off this Parents' Day for everybody, and we're gonna do it this way. We're gonna do it like I love the switching of the signs and the different
Awesome.
fun creative ways they do that. I'm always a sucker for the like to Saigon for the military camp, and then somebody shoots it with like a Nerf gun and it becomes Miss Saigon for the theater camp kids. Seeing the kids do a little bit of not To Kill a Mockingbird, Streetcar Named Desire with Stanley and yelling about Blanche and stuff. Now it gives me a little PTSD having done the show, but still fun. Along with all the parents coming and being like, oh, I thought they told us noon. No, it was 9 or whatever. All that bit.
The entire German accent paying off for this moment for him to be like 9.
Mm-hmm. Yep. What do we have? Polk and showing up just in time to pair up with Biff and having their whole fun little kind of coming up there. But then my note here. Polk just straight up licking his lips at the sound or at the discussion of money. Like when like Mud's like, here, I've got the money, and we just cut away to Polk and he's just,
Let me
yeah,
see.
money.
You're a little short. You're a little fat.
Yeah, that's like he comes in and makes the most out of his last couple lines. Yeah, you're a little short. You're a little fat. And if you're ever in Boca, don't look me up. And Biff saying, or not Biff, but Tom Wilson saying, I'll do that. Not realizing he's been.
Well, he catches it at the very end, and he's like,
like such a fun little like. Okay, these guys, don't have a ton to do in this movie, but they make the most of it. They chew
the scenery hard. They ham it up. Everybody hams it up. Like all the adults ham it up super great.
Yeah.
Dad, who's way too much of an asshole, who's going to send his kid to military camp. dad who's way too much of a nerd.
Yeah. Oh, I love the military dad being stuck in that foxhole, and like again, that's
freezing my balls off. You can thaw them out later.
Yeah.
Here's a sandwich, and they put sprinkles dirt in it too,
yeah.
and it's like, this is like a kid who's like, I'm really gonna mess with my dad, and then at the very end we have like a heartfelt moment.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, but his dad still like threatened to beat the crap out of him if he didn't answer the phone for him. Like,
yeah.
It's a whole thing. Like, it's like, there's problems with that guy, but obviously there's reasons Zach's mom didn't show up, because they're divorced. 100% they're divorced.
Yeah. Trying to think, do I have any, I also love the recurring, just because I'm smart doesn't mean I can't act stupid. That was absolutely like a repeated line from me in my house growing up, because my parents would very much kind of put that on me of like, you're too smart for this kind of stuff.
When we started talking about potential, I had like PTSD flashbacks, like
Right.
my father being like,
Yeah.
like, you have to do this, like, you have potential. It's like, and now I'm 34 and unemployed, and it's like, what the hell have I done with my life?
Yeah. Yeah, and then we get like we get the payoff of the 5:15 flyby, which is a great little beat. We get the payoff of the broken down car that they find that Zach spends the summer kind of fixing up, and he gifts it off to Dennis. And then the campers get one little last send off where they do all the spray paint stuff and kind of throw it back into nowhere, and then we get the a surprising of the era little post credits tag.
Yep.
With the pre credits bit of and slash the end of the movie being the like skinny dipping, the payoff to the skinny dipping beat of the movie.
The kid being a perv ball the entire movie, getting his comeuppance. Yes.
And then Betty being like, all right, like, do you have the guts? Wow, you really do have the guts. But you don't have a spare bathing suit, which is again a payoff to him throwing his bathing suit in the fire at the beginning of the movie. And then if you go through all the credits and you actually finish the credits, you get like one last Betty from him. So yeah, shout out to a little post credits tag for that as well. So I still have a ton of fun with this movie. It definitely is of its era and stuff.
Absolutely,
but it's a fun kind of like flashback to a simpler time. Like there are so many things in here where I'm like they're out there playing flashlight tag at midnight, and I'm like, I remember doing that with my friends at the parks and stuff like that. So like it is it feels like, yeah, you wouldn't make this in this era because kids are too attached to their screens and stuff in this era. Like and we even get a little nod to that where the kids are like, we get the voiceover that sounds like they're trying to like make a fire and stuff like that. Like, you got to rub them together or whatever. And it turns out they're turning on the TV to watch Beverly Hills 90210. So like even that, yeah. And obviously they, fork over some money for a bigger screen TV that they have to just saw down the wall to get inside. But it does feel like a oddly movie of a simpler time, and maybe that's just because obviously I don't have the perspective of a kid growing up these days. But as a kid who was growing up during the era of this movie, it very much took me back to a lot of the dumb things me and my friends did too. And it was like, this is very much this is one of those where like I can point to and be like, oh, I'm clearly the mud of this group. Like in the same way that like I could point to the Power Rangers and be like, oh, I'm clearly Billy. Or I could point to the Turtles and be like, oh, I'm clearly Donatello. Like, I'm the nerd of this group. I get that. I like that is that is absolutely what my place in the order of these things would be. But yeah, it was fun to go back and revisit this one. Any final thoughts before we wrap up here, Cam?
No, I think I pretty much shared everything I wanted to say. I think that we absolutely kind of like cover this movie top to bottom. Our podcast is almost as long as the movie is. Like, shout out to when movies were only 90 minutes.
Yeah, we're only an hour. Like we stayed well under on this.
Oh
one,
yeah,
I
for
think.
sure.
But yeah, lots of fun stuff in here.
My comment, my joke was, this podcast is an hour, and it's almost as long as the movie.
Yeah.
Movies used to be 90 minutes.
It is absolutely, and looking ahead to some of the other ones we're doing, it is very much like, oh yeah, we're in for a good run where we can just knock out some of these movies real quick.
You asked me, like, you're going to be able to watch the movie today? I was like, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
90 minutes? Yeah, I got that.
Yeah. All right. So report card. We were graded from A plus to F. I'll go first on this one. This is an easy A for me. Not A plus, but like this was such a fun, like a fun flashback, fun kind of like look at this era, and such a fun revisit for me. That yeah, I think like more than certainly some things that I felt like could have been like problematic in here, holds up really well. It's like this is one of those where it's like when Dennis starts doing the characters, I'm like, uh-oh, is one of these going to be real bad? And the closest we get is like maybe a little bit problematic, but he's more doing like a Richard Simmons for the fat camp thing
100%,
than any kind
that
of
is-
like over the top, Faye kind of stereotype or
I
anything.
definitely
like that.
got that as like it was way more about this is a Richard Simmons impression.
Yeah.
The entire time, between the hair and the outfits and the way he was talking, that is a Richard Simmons. If you're like, well, what? It's like, no, you don't understand. Richard Simmons defined health in the 90s.
Rest in peace.
Yeah, rest in peace. Passed away not too long ago. But yeah, no. If anybody's like, well, it's like, no, you don't understand. This isn't representation. This isn't like him playing. It's like, this is not a bit. He is doing an impression of Richard Simmons, because my mother owned like not that many, because you just
But you had the workout tapes.
Yeah, my mom had like
you only
3
needed
workout.
the one workout tape.
You only needed like my mom had like 3 workout tapes of Richard Simmons, and it was usually the same workout, just updated with like the time.
Sure.
Richard Simmons defined health in the 90s,
Mm-hmm.
because he got away from being like, forget diet fads, focus on like exercise, and like in not like going to the gym and being on a bike for 2 hours. It was, you can do this at home for like 20 minutes a day, and it's what you need.
Yeah.
And he was all about accessibility and health.
Yep.
So him doing a Richard Simmons is an awesome homage to that era.
And they have some fun with it of like the cake switcheroo kind of thing. And I loved to the point that you made earlier of like Gabby does have this nice little arc. Like I think of the 4, I think she actually gets the least real to do, but like her scenes do hit a little bit better. Like she gets the great scene with Mud in the bus of like, hey, when like the little like meet cute kind of like when we have our growth spurts, like we shouldn't turn on each other. We shouldn't date the popular people. Like we date each other kind of thing. And that little bit of like, oh, they're so cute together. But then I love her little bit when her mom shows up and she's like, oh my God, you've lost so much weight. And it's like, oh yeah, she's been taking care of the kids. So she's been making like the appropriate meals for everybody.
And also she's being active in the summer. Like she's running around being active, and it's like, yeah, that's it.
Yeah, that'll do it. So yeah, the not being forced into like a fat camp where you're just gonna be forced into making terrible food choices. But shout out to all that stuff. So an A for me. What do you want to give this one?
I mean, this one is a B+ for me. I think that I reserve the A for a level of quality that I don't think this film reaches, but I also don't think it's trying to reach. This is very much this is a B+ movie. Like, and it's solid. It's a solid B+. So
Cool. Extra credit, other suggestions if you like this from Disney Plus. We have Heavyweights, which spoilers is going to be next week's episode. So stay tuned for that. We're gonna kind of stick with the camp theme here for a little bit. We have The Mighty Ducks, which we've done a That D Plus show on. The Sandlot, which we've done a That D Plus show on. Blank Check, which we've done a That D Plus show on. The Lindsay Lohan version of The Parent Trap. Home Alone, which we've done. Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, which we have not done, so we'll have to slide that in somewhere along the line. And Millions, which is one I do not know anything about. But then the other thing I'm going to shout out here that I mentioned earlier is also, if you like this movie, go watch Accepted, which actually probably doesn't hold up as well because it was a, college comedy romp kind of thing it's got Justin Long and Jonah Hill.
oh yeah, I cannot imagine it ages well.
But it's got like Lewis Black in effectively the Christopher Lloyd role, and instead of creating a summer camp, they're creating a college for all these kids to go to because they can't get into colleges of their own. And like from the first trailers I saw on that, I'm like, this is just Camp Nowhere, but for college. Like, am I crazy? Like, because nobody's talking about it. Nobody was like making reference to the fact that this is just basically Camp Nowhere retold.
No, it
but
was
for a
not.
different
Nobody was
setting.
making that comparison.
And I'm like, what? It was that first sign of like, oh, maybe like I'm the weirdo that watched Camp Nowhere growing up and nobody else knows about this movie kind of thing. And like seeing the box office, like, oh yeah, probably there probably weren't a ton of people that knew Camp Nowhere too well. But it meant a lot to me, damn it. And I've watched that way more than I've ever watched Accepted. I think I've watched Accepted once, and was like, all right, this is fine. But it is very much a like, oh, yeah, that movie probably has a little bit more problematic stuff, I think, just because of the era, the cast of characters being an older cast of characters that are going to push the limit more than in ostensibly a kids movie, and I think also just the era that those comedies were being made are pushing the envelope a little bit more than we might expect otherwise. So it's one of those like, oh yeah, if we went and watched Accepted on here, maybe that one's not going to hold up that much. Maybe there's going to be some problematic lines and character beats and stuff like that in that one. But I admittedly have not watched it in many years, so who knows? I could be wrong. But if you did like this one, go check that out, I guess, to see what it looks like if you do a college version of this. And again, that's where I say like, no, they could absolutely do this kind of thing in the modern age. It would just be a matter of, okay, you gotta have a little bit of, you gotta have the computer kids do the website to fool the parents for the computer camp and all these other camps that you're gonna be kind of getting the kids sent off to. And hey, if they could fake up all the computers that they put together to pretend to hack into a military Air Force base, they could probably fool some dumb parents that aren't as tech savvy.
Yep.
So yeah, absolutely. Extracurriculars, I don't think we're watching anything else on Disney Plus right now. I'm pretty sure we're just kind of checking in on Disney Plus for the That D Plus Show
Pretty
stuff.
much, yeah.
Unless you have something else out there, but
Nope.
Okay. The other thing I'll say, shout out to go check out Downfall from Critical Role. Lots of fun on that 3-parter. Well, that is going to do it for this week's episode of That D Plus Show. Thank you, Cam, for joining me to talk about Camp Nowhere here. As I said, next week we're going to do heavyweights, and it looks like we're going to Logan's going to try and join us for that one. So
Nice.
stay tuned for that. Another fun kind of revisit of the 90s. And spoilers for kind of the like who's who of that one. Judd Apatow is one of the writers on that one, which
Yeah,
I
I didn't know
did not remember or know.
I didn't know that, yeah.
Yeah, very early Judd Apatow film for next week's episode. So that'll be fun to check out. So yeah, you can follow Cameron at Rev Cabot, 2 B's and 2 T's. Anything you want to give a shout out to there, Cam?
Yeah, give a shout out. I am still streaming right now. Sorry, not right now, but I am still streaming every afternoon, Monday through Thursday. That may be interrupted as I get sub jobs, or I might get an actual job hopefully soon. But in the meantime, yeah, you can check it out. Usually around 2:30 to about 5 o'clock, PST time, MST. It's yeah. Anyway,
It's would it be if you start getting more sub work, which is going to take up your mornings and early afternoon stuff? Are you considering like, oh, you'll just push the streams back and stream later, or are you pretty much like, hey, you don't want to be streaming into the evening?
I might. It's not like I got anything else going on. Like I might end up doing that just because like I've kind of gotten the taste of it. It's like it's fun doing it every day. Yeah. I like. Here's the thing. I might. It really depends on like what those sub days are gonna look like.
Sure.
Because if it's just like it's, and it really comes down to also like, am I gonna maybe pick up other things to kind of like fulfill budget needs?
Yeah, to pay rent.
To pay rent and stuff. So yeah, it's it's a tough time right now for me, but overall, I am streaming. But I also don't like I'm streaming on YouTube, so obviously there's no like monetary incentive for that.
Sure, yeah. I realized about this time of the episode in our last That Nerdy Site show that I'd been using the That
No.
Plush template. I just realized I've been using the That Nerdy Site template.
No,
for this entire
Trevor.
episode. Whatever. Nobody cares. Even though nobody cares, I always put it in like the YouTube notes of like, no, Trevor realized way too late that he was using the wrong template. Doesn't matter. It's still us in a frame of nerdy glasses. It's just a matter of like, which logo do you see in the bottom left corner of the video or bottom right corner of the video? it's still, yeah, it's like the only difference is that, and like the frame goes from red to blue. So no huge foul here. Whatever, it happens.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah, go check out Cam's streams. You can follow me at Trevor J. Starkey. Speaking of, I will shout out this last week's That Nerdy Site show, where Cam and I did our full thoughts on Deadpool and Wolverine. So if you want our opinions on that film, go check that out. Of course, as always, we do like a spoiler-free thoughts for the opening a little bit, and we dive into full spoiler territory. And I'm sure when it eventually comes to Disney Plus, we'll do a That D Plus show on it, and that'll be a fun one to dive into there as well. If you like what you heard, please remember to like, subscribe, rate, review, share the podcast with friends, all that fun stuff. You can follow all of us over at thatnerdysite.com or thatnerdysite on Twitter, and find the latest from us over there. Thank you for joining us. As always, stay nerdy, be good to each other. Class dismissed. And I don't know, some fun, some Winston Churchill speech.
Nowhere. There we go.